Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Live on the phone with me today, I have Hannah Morgan in Rochester, New York. Hannah is a career strategist at the company she founded, CareerSherpa.net. She's also a contributing blogger on careers for U.S. News and World Report and recently authored a new book, The Infographic Resume. Hannah, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Angela. I'm excited to be here.
It's so nice to talk with you. We were talking just before we got started, and I'd love it if you'd share just a little bit about your background. How long have you been kind of in this career development space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started my own business about 7 years ago, but my career path sort of winded its way up there. I started in human resources a long, long time ago where I was doing recruitment and employee development, and that position led me to a job with Lee Hecht Harrison, which is a national outplacement provider, where I was able to help people transition who were being let go out of their jobs. And from there, I actually ended up working for the local one-stop Department of Labor office in the city of Rochester where I live. And I was there for about 5 years, during that terrible time, 2009, 2010, when the job market sort of crashed. And that's about the same time I started building my own business. So I was able to transition from a full-time job, working my way into my own business, and it worked out really well for me. And one of the things that we were talking about is that I couldn't have planned this. I didn't know when I was starting my career that I would end up having my own business doing what I'm doing. You sort of take the pieces of the puzzle and you fit them together where you can as you move forward in your career, and you have to look at the labor market and what things are happening. So it's a wonderful place to be in. I'm really excited to have made the shift that I've made. But I could not have predicted it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really highlights the fact that there's no one right answer. It's a process and a path, and you're kind of working through it one day at a time.
Absolutely.
One thing, just as a side note, one thing I really liked with your website is that you focus a lot on your branding very much is around sort of a path or a hike or climbing a mountain kind of a thing. And that's kind of what I picture you're almost describing in your own path, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think that, whenever people are writing and trying to advise and guide, it always makes sense if you've been through a similar journey yourself. And so, speaking sort of firsthand and then secondhand through all the people that I've worked with, definitely allows me to better understand the different difficulties that people face as they try to find their way to their next job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so one of the things that you really specialize in, which is so exciting, is really the online presence for job seekers and helping them with their online presence. Can you help us understand why our online presence is so important?
Yeah, it becomes more and more important. The reason I get really excited about this is because typically job seekers feel sort of that they don't have any power or control over their destiny during their job search. They always feel they're at the whim and the mercy of applying for jobs online. And one of the things that I love about this online presence and online visibility is that job seekers can influence, control what is being said about them online. And we know, I know because I read a lot about what's happening in the world of recruitment and how companies are filling jobs, that a lot of recruiters, and it depends on what survey you're looking at, but it's more than 50% and as high as 98% of recruiters are using social media and using the internet to source or identify candidates. And so many of them have said, many recruiters and hiring managers have said, if I can't find somebody online, that's a red flag. So one of the things that is so empowering is that without any money being spent, anybody can have an online presence through the use of LinkedIn and some other social media tools, as well as perhaps even having their own website, again, at very little cost. And so that really is just a longer-term strategy because we know that no one's going to be in a job for the rest of their life. That things are much more transient now, and jobs come and go quickly, and I don't want to see job seekers being caught flat-footed without another job opportunity lined up. It's so much work to build that pipeline. So because we know recruiters and employers are looking online, I'm hoping and praying and helping job seekers better understand how they can get online.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so when you're talking about job seekers, it sounds very like you're not talking about one particular kind of job seeker. It sounds like, what if we're not highly technical? Should we still care about our online presence, or is this online presence only reserved for people who just know a lot about the internet and computers?
No. And one of the things that we know today is that everybody walks around with a computer in their pocket. Like 90% of the population, not quite. In the U.S., almost everybody has a smartphone. And almost everybody with a smartphone has some sort of social media app. They say that, I don't know what the number is, but 70% of the U.S. adults are on Facebook. So even if Facebook is the only social media language you speak, you can still have an online presence without mastering other languages and other online tools. It's not anything that is overly technical or complicated. Can it get overly technical and complicated? Sure, but it doesn't have to be. And I encourage people just to take baby steps. And they say that if you've learned one foreign language, it's easier to pick up another. I will say the same is probably true with social media languages. If you understand how to use Facebook, then it's not that different to use LinkedIn, and it's not that different to use, some of the other Twitter or Instagram or some of the other tools out there.
No, I completely agree. That's a really good analogy. It's the same thing with cell phones and all kinds of technology. They're all so similar in so many ways that once you kind of, can break through the first one, the rest are much easier. Well, I'm curious. So as we're going about, setting up our online presence, do you feel like there are certain careers where it's more important or it's more critical that we have an online presence maybe than others?
Yeah, I think that any public-facing role or any role in which you would be required to have any public communication or public-facing outreach would definitely require it. So what I mean by that is anything in public relations. There are people now, and this wasn't a career option 5-10 years ago, but a career in social media, whether it's monitoring, content creation, writing of any kind, anything like that where there's some PR communication role involved. It really is important that you have an online presence and you're demonstrating your knowledge of the tools that you say you'd be using. So marketing roles generally, you need to understand how to use use social media, so it's important to have that. We're seeing social media and an online presence being used by a wide spectrum of people. And so by occupation, anything marketing related usually, if we look at different industries, companies that focus in on high tech, anything technical, usually like to see that somebody is savvy with social media and understands some of the nuances. If you look at any kind of a startup company, and it doesn't even really matter what the startup is, they're looking for people who are hacking the system and able to tap into grassroots efforts, and showing that you can do that through social media and build your own online presence would be another great way. I've even heard that a lot of parts of finance are into seeing social media presence, and I think it's really hard depending on the type of finance that you're in because of the legality and the restrictions of that. But those are the ones that we typically see it in, but we're seeing it across the board. Customer service roles. I've even seen nurses and medical doctors who are active on social media, and they're actually using it to reach their patients and the people that they're working with, and to brainstorm and collaborate with other people in the profession. So it becomes sort of a multifaceted function and tool and philosophy. Not only are you doing it to be seen, but you're doing it to interact with other people, and we see that happening across industries.
Oh, yeah, it's a really good point. So one of the social media platforms that you mentioned a couple of times as being the most important, probably at this point, is LinkedIn, at least when it comes to job searching. So, say we're out there on LinkedIn and we're really trying to, make things happen. What are some of the mistakes that you're seeing that we're making on LinkedIn that maybe we need to pay more attention to?
Yeah. There are a couple of, just walking through the profile from top to bottom, that one of the most important parts of LinkedIn is a profile picture, because we're talking about a social network here. LinkedIn is not a resume. I mean, it is, but it's not. And one of the reasons people like social media is that you can get a better sense of who the person is. LinkedIn published a stat that LinkedIn profiles with photos are viewed 11 to 14 times more often than profiles without photos.
Wow, that's huge.
So have a photo, right? We all walk around again with our smartphones in our pockets, so it's not hard to get a photo. Now, let's talk about the photo, because we don't want to have a photo, and I'm not going to recommend that it's some cheesy selfie. It really should, have somebody else take it so that it's further than an arm's length away, and just make sure that the background is bland, it's not distracting, and that you're not photoshopping or cutting off the shoulder of somebody else. It was a great picture of you at a party, and you're cutting off your partner's shoulder and just showing you. Just take the time and have somebody take a nice phone shot of you, and make sure that you upload it with the right dimensions into LinkedIn so it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what are some of are there any other sort of big mistakes besides the photo that we really need to avoid?
The headline is so important. I do some work with a local college, and I see a lot of the seniors who are embarking on LinkedIn. They're using their school name and their degree in their headline. So it might say, Hannah Morgan, senior in humanities major, Bachelor of Arts degree, Ohio Wesleyan, which is where I went to school. That's not good SEO, and that's not helping the person viewing your profile understand what it is you're looking to do next. So the headline is the line that appears right underneath your name, and that needs to be focused on the occupation and industry that you want to be in next. And oftentimes people call it a branding statement. It doesn't have to be a full sentence. It's 120 characters. It can be, just a string of separated keywords, but it should be descriptive of what you want somebody to know you're interested in. The other part, so that headline is really important. It's the first thing when someone's searching and a bunch of profiles come up. All they're going to see is your picture and your name and your headline. And you want that to be clearly shout out what kind of profession you are in or you want to be in. The other part of LinkedIn that is underutilized and ignored is the vanity URL, which appears right under your picture in the profile. It is, by default, LinkedIn gives you a series of letters and numbers after your name. It's really ugly, and it's not optimized. By clicking on the blue pen next to that, you can customize that so it's just your first and last name, as long as that's not taken. You may have to do your first name, last name with designatory letters if you're a CPA, or maybe you just say the Hannah Morgan after the slash. That LinkedIn URL, by doing that, you're doing one little thing to increase the odds that someone searching for your name will find it faster on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
So it's a small thing to do. And, oh, by the way, I'd love to see everybody start creating an email signature, no matter who your provider is. If it's Outlook or Gmail or Yahoo, whoever you're using, you always have that opportunity to create an email signature where you can put your name, your telephone number, your email address, and, oh, by the way, add that URL to your LinkedIn profile so that people can quickly click through and learn more about you if they want to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so you made a really good point about the URL. I'm curious, when you work with students, do you recommend that they also put the URL on their resume?
Yes, absolutely. Why not? It's actually more important to have that than the email signature, or the email address or phone number. So yes, it absolutely should go on the resume.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I have a little bit of mixed feelings because I think regionally at least in Tennessee, the folks who tend to put it on their resume are the ones who are unemployed versus those who are employed tend to leave it off. But in other regions of the country, I'd see it as pretty standard. So I kind of have a little bit of mixed feelings about it.
Right, and so that's the other thing, and I get worried when I see people in their LinkedIn profile for their headline, they say, in transition or actively seeking for a job, which is not a good headline to put in there, because that's not a criteria by which any recruiter is filtering or sorting or looking. It may mean that you're available immediately, but anybody technically could be available immediately, and there are too many biases and prejudices against unemployed people. I would definitely recommend not having anything in your LinkedIn headline that speaks to the fact that you're actively looking.
No, I completely agree. And you also mentioned something with regards to the headline. You mentioned SEO. And I think that what you may be kind of alluding to is the fact that a recruiter, for example, may find your profile based on things that are in your headline or other things in your that are in your profile. The SEO stands for search engine optimization. And I think that kind of what you're getting at is that the content of your profile is just as important as having that profile.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the things that we want to understand is that we're not writing this LinkedIn profile for ourselves. We really need to get into the head and mindset of how a recruiter is searching for people. I spend a lot of my time interacting with recruiters because I need to understand how they go about finding candidates, right? And so when they are searching, whether they're searching within LinkedIn or just through the internet, they're using a complex string of keywords and phrases that will narrow down their search to find exactly the right candidate. So the kinds of things that they might use in their search criteria are programming languages or specific industry knowledge or certifications. They're not going to search for leadership or communication skills. They're going to be very specific because what they're trying to do is weed out and really narrow their search to find the right candidate. So if you think about the occupation that you're looking for, what are the key skill sets that are specific to that industry, that occupation, that you think a recruiter would look for? And many times those specific skills are already mentioned in the job postings that you're looking. You'll see them over and over again. So if you need to know how to use, I'm just trying to think of the right program. If you need to understand how to use QuickBooks because you're in accounting, you better say, if you do in fact have QuickBooks knowledge, QuickBooks in your headline, because that's a really important skill set. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that skill set, probably something that you should work on.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I've kind of seen examples of this within people's LinkedIn profile that want to work in social media. And they may put that, at their last job, they had experience, managing the social media content, but then they don't get down into the nitty gritty of it was for Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. They don't maybe list out those details. And I think those details are, like you mentioned, like QuickBooks, that's what the recruiter's actually looking for more than anything else.
Right, absolutely. So the headline is part one, where the job seeker, the person looking for work, can really have an influence on where they're coming up in search results for anybody, a recruiter using that, or anybody using LinkedIn to search. The summary is another area that people oftentimes don't pay enough attention to, don't fill it out. It can be tricky, but it's a great bio. It can be as long as 2,000 characters. And this is another place to repeat those important skill sets, the technical skills. But it's also a great place to talk about what's important to you as a human being and where you are in your career journey. And so you can interject some personality into that. So it's more than just the boring, dry, I have skills and blah, 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 and I have 10 years of experience and blah, 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 blah. This is really a chance for the individual to talk about what's important to them and why they are doing what they're doing and what gets them excited about it.
Yes.
Jader.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are really great tips. Aside from these tips that you've given us, is there anything else that we should be focused on that will help us get more profile views on LinkedIn, that will help get more people looking at our LinkedIn page?
If you are, it's not enough to build a LinkedIn profile and just wait for people to come to you. You need to be active on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn makes it much easier today than it used to find different ways to be active on LinkedIn. One is to share a status update. And if you do that once a day, I guarantee you that you will increase the number of people seeing your profile. So a status update could be that you are sharing a photo that you took of you attending a networking event, professional networking event. It could be sharing an article that you came across either on LinkedIn or somewhere else, and you can add a commentary. Love this article because it explained the importance of LinkedIn, headlines, whatever it was all about. Or you could share the status update of somebody else that you're connected to on LinkedIn, and say, great, share by, and tag the person, and then they'll receive a notification, but it will also be shared in your status update. So status update's one quick, easy thing that anybody can do, and if you do it once a day, it will increase the number of people reviewing your profile. The other thing that's really easy to do, that LinkedIn has made easy to do, is to congratulate somebody on a new job or an anniversary with a company or a birthday. That's a great way to stay in front of your network and to stay connected with those people that you're already connected with on LinkedIn.
I love that feature. It's super easy, and I think it really makes the other person feel special that you noticed, that they got a promotion or that they had an anniversary. I really love that one. You can both, I think, leave a comment, or you can kind of leave like a thumbs up sort of thing.
And it takes seconds to do. It doesn't take long. And it's a nice thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree. I think, the more that you're engaged on LinkedIn in all these ways, the more people will look at your page, the more likely they will be to think of you when they're, out there thinking of who they might hire for their next open position, so to speak.
Yep, it's staying top of mind and in front of your network, as well as building awareness among other people as well.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked quite a bit about LinkedIn. Are there other sites online that we should care about in terms of our online presence as job seekers?
Absolutely, and I think Facebook is someplace where everybody already is, and I'm not going to recommend that people create a new special Facebook account just for job search. What I think is a smarter approach is to really just be more aware and monitoring what you are putting up on Facebook or whom you are sharing it with. Facebook is where you're already connected to all the people that you know and people who care about you. And those people, if given the opportunity to help connect you with somebody with a job, would do that in an instant. What happens is they probably don't even know that you are looking, because on Facebook people don't necessarily talk about that. So if we consider Facebook as a great way to connect with people who we're already connected with and let them know that we are in the market and what we're in the market for, I think we can be better at getting the help that we're really looking for. So the bio in Facebook is really something most people don't take a second to look at, but there's a great section of Facebook on your personal page where you can write a bio and describe what it is you're all about. You can also include your work history in your LinkedIn, on your Facebook profile, and most people don't do that. You can even include specialties or skill sets or interests, I think they call them, on Facebook. You can follow company pages on Facebook. So there's a lot of different things that people can do within a platform that they're already somewhat familiar with, as long as they're vigilant in monitoring what they are posting and what's being posted about them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the one thing, with Facebook is that typically we have a lot of personal connections on Facebook. Do you recommend being cautious about, say, connecting with your coworkers on Facebook, or, do you think that it's kind of fair game either way? I mean, what's your perspective on that?
So, great point. We need to be very aware of who we're connected to and what we're sharing. So I've always been of the belief that I'm not going to connect with my coworkers on Facebook or LinkedIn while I'm working there. I just feel that there's often too much of a conflict of interest, and I don't want them. I'm always looking for my next job. I don't want people to see that I'm always looking for my next job, especially if I want to keep my job, because companies are finicky about that stuff. They might let you go because they see that you are posting information that's indicating that you're looking for a new job. That you don't want that to be found out. So one of the strategies is to not connect with people. You can connect with them once you're gone. If you're seeing them on a daily basis, hey, maybe you don't need to be connected. But once you're gone, then you can connect with them. You just have to be so careful that if you are employed and looking for a job, that you don't do it blatantly, openly, obviously on Facebook or any of the social media accounts. You've got to be very, very careful that nobody is seeing that kind of search activity and when you're on those other platforms.
No, I totally agree. You know, I once had a colleague at a place I worked who revealed at work that she was looking for a new job, just, you know, and was really surprised because they actually let her go when they heard that. And, you know, when I talk to people, it's never crossed their mind before that, you know, depending on the laws and the state where you live, you know, you can be fired for no reason. And if it's, you know, if it's perceived that you're not maybe loyal for whatever reason, you know, they may decide they don't need you anymore. So I think that's a really, really important point about keeping things really kind of secret.
Yeah, and to key back on what you're saying, when I worked for a company in human resources, there was one employee who was working on his resume during his lunch break.
Oh.
His manager saw him doing this and came to me and said, "I'm firing so-and-so. I saw him working on his resume during lunch." I said, "You can't do that. I'm not going to let you do that. Otherwise, he's a good employee, and there's nothing that says that he's not going to give you 100% if he's working on his resume during his lunch break. So, no, you can't fire him." But that was a huge battle that I fought to protect the poor job seeker, the poor employee. Most people don't have somebody who is going to be protecting them in that kind of an instance.
That's right. And you just can't take any risk. You know, you want to use your own personal computer to work on things like your resume. I mean, it's just, that's a huge conflict to be using your work computer. And I could see how that would be a real problem. Well, so one thing I've noticed is sometimes when it comes to looking for a job, you're trying to find the hiring manager at this new company and maybe you don't know them. And do you ever see instances where people use social media, for example, to find new people they don't already know who work at the company, whether it's the hiring manager or someone else who's influential? Do you ever see that happening?
And really, yes, I do. And one of the reasons why I am active on different social media platforms is so that I can sleuth out different people. Because everybody's different in different platforms. We don't know what somebody's platform of social media platform of choice is. And again, I'll go back and say one of the best reasons for Facebook is you can find those people through Facebook. Oftentimes, if you type in people who work at XYZ company, you can see a host of people that are on Facebook, but not on LinkedIn. So I love using Facebook for that, but I also love using Twitter, and I oftentimes use Google+, because I can search for people who have a company name in their Twitter bio or in their Google+ profile. So I like using a variety of different social media platforms that I'm active on in some way, shape, or form, to use that as a way to connect. And what I have found, especially with Twitter more so than Facebook and LinkedIn, if I reach out and send a tweet to somebody, which I can do even if I'm not connected, I can tweet to somebody and say, "Hey, I'd love to talk with you. I'd love what your company is doing. I'd love to talk with you a little more about it. Could we, exchange emails," or something like that. If I send that publicly through Twitter, they may or may not respond, but I will tell you more often than not, people will respond because Twitter is known as being a more open network. They don't have to, but they oftentimes do because they're there to meet new people as well. So Twitter, I find, can be very helpful for reaching out cold to people that you don't know already, and not needing that intermediary referral to absolutely make a connection.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I have found sometimes on Twitter I'm able to reach out to executives, and I find that they actually manage their own Twitter account at times. And so versus if I had maybe sent them an email, they might have had like an administrative assistant or someone who was kind of filtering through those emails. I have found that sometimes on Twitter, not always, like you said, but sometimes they will actually respond to you and it's really them. So that's just a super exciting part, I'd say, of social media when you're sort of job searching and you're looking to make new connections.
And email's a funny thing, right? We think that everybody's using it, but we get so bogged down with so much junk in email. And I think social media, it's just easy to go to that, see what's going on. When I was writing my book, I would reach out to people through email, and when I didn't get a response within a couple of days, I'd go find their social media accounts, whether it be Twitter or wherever they were, and I'd contacted them through social media, and that almost always worked. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get a response through email. Okay, I'm going to try option 1, option 2.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like with email, sometimes you're guessing what their email address is versus on Twitter, you can see really clearly, like, this is them. It's not so hard to find them. Well, so another big part of being online, as you know, is what's called sort of online reputation management. And I know you talk about this on your website. For any of us who may be kind of unfamiliar with the term online reputation management, can you talk to us a little bit about, kind of what it is in general?
Yeah, and it's a spin-off of what businesses are already paying attention to. If you're a big brand like a Coke or a Disney, whenever somebody mentions your company name, you want to see what they're saying about you, and you want to be able to make sure that it's good stuff, and if it's not good stuff, that you respond to it in some way, shape, or form. And so you want to keep track of where your name, your company name is being monitored or being mentioned. The same is true for us as individuals. One of the things that I wish everybody would do sort of on a monthly basis is to Google their name or to set up an alert me on the web through Google to see when and where and how people with their name are being mentioned. If you're not keeping track of when and where and how your name is being mentioned, you're not sure what people are going to see. And you always want to know if someone is searching for your name and it's not you, that there isn't a case of mistaken identity, and that has happened to many job seekers over the years where they weren't getting interviews and they Googled their name and they found that they shared the name of a convict or somebody else who was a criminal or somebody else with less than good things about them, and there was a case of mistaken identity. So managing your online reputation is being more proactive and taking an interest in when and where and how your name is appearing online across different social channels and through the web search. And we all can control that with a little bit of knowledge, and it's not that much work. I prefer, rather than getting into all the SEO, search engine optimization and tools, there's a great service that's a freemium, free for basic, and then you can upgrade, called brandyourself.com. And it will make it really easy for you as an individual to improve how your name appears in search results online. So you would list your LinkedIn profile and any other social media profiles and any link to online content that mentions you. Maybe you were mentioned in a news article or something like that. So you would select the online content that you already know is out there and you want people to see first. And the magic behind the scenes happens because Brand Yourself will do things and help you do things to improve how your name, when and how your name appears in search results. So overall, online reputation management is the process of keeping track of all this stuff, and we don't want it to be a surprise. It's like somebody spreading a rumor about you and you're not knowing about that rumor until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. I have people ask me a lot, do you think that HR people really actually Google my name? And I said, yeah, I think they do.
I know they do.
Right.
Not all of them, but yeah. And I think it happens at different points during the process. Mm-hmm. It may happen, when they're initially looking or trying to source somebody. It may happen after they've gotten a pile of applications. It may happen right before they extend an offer. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to be, I don't think any job seeker should ever be surprised when they find out that they didn't get a job offer because there was something negative said about them.
Yeah, and I think you made a very good point about mistaken identity. I actually spoke to someone once who there was a career criminal living in the same city as them with the same name. And so when you would Google them, all these Google images would pop up and it would be all mugshots. And the person looked a little bit similar to this person. And so fortunately, the person that I spoke to was aware of the issue and was monitoring it pretty carefully, so they at least could sort of, know what to say if they were asked questions, or could sort of try to put out positive things. But like you mentioned, you can set up a Google alert. It's at google.com/alerts, and that's also another free service, that emails you anytime your name is mentioned on the internet.
That's a really good idea. And one of the things that takes a little bit of savvy, but not as much technical savvy as it used to, if you've got a really common name, or in that case where there was that mistaken identity, one of the best ways to ensure that your name for you, the right person, is always coming up first is to buy your own domain name.
Yes.
So, Hannah Morgan, whether it's .com, .me, .net, .org, whatever it is, it costs less than $10 a month and $10 a year to own that. And if you have any kind of technical savvy, there are a lot of services that will make it very easy for you to create just sort of a landing page or an online portfolio that makes it really easy to own your name when it's being searched.
Yes.
So that will always come up first.
I love that. It will come up first. It will come up above LinkedIn. Oftentimes it'll come up above the negative stuff because Google looks at that URL, and if it's your name and it matches with what's being searched, it is what comes up first. I think that's such a good point. And like you said, there are lots of tools so that it's not impossible to do.
Right.
Well, so speaking of having a website, another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I know you're passionate about, is blogs, and sort of in your mind, how blogs kind of factor in this whole online presence conversation.
Yeah. So blogging is not for everybody, and I get that, but I think there's so many different ways to blog today that it's opened up the horizon a little bit. Blogging is fresh new content, and we know something in the world of search engine optimization and Google. Google loves fresh new content, right? So blogging is very search engine friendly, but it's also a great opportunity for anybody, to prove that they have some level of expertise or area of knowledge they are interested in, and they have strong written communication skills, or if they're shooting video, that they've got great verbal communication, oral communication skills. So writing a blog shows that you've got an area of interest and you are thoughtful and savvy and current enough to realize that sharing that knowledge is beneficial. When I first started blogging many years ago, it was really just me and a bunch of crickets chirping. There was nobody really reading my blog. My dad would sometimes comment, but he would never comment on the blog. He would send me an email. So it's not that you're absolutely doing it for generating an audience. That is a nice thing to have happen. It's really just a way for an individual to put their thoughts out there and to establish some reputation around being knowledgeable around something. And LinkedIn has a built-in blogging platform, so it's not as if you need to learn anything new. You can utilize that functionality within LinkedIn and test the waters. And if you love doing that, if you like blogging about whatever subject matter it is that you're interested in, then maybe you consider creating your own blog, outside of LinkedIn. But I think it's a great way, and I know many people have been asked to provide writing samples for jobs that they've been interviewing for, and they've got nothing except academic papers, which isn't bad, but that's really not where the world is today, and everybody needs to think about, okay, how are my writing skills? What proof do I have? And maybe your blog is just one more way to prove that you've got strong writing skills and a body of knowledge to support it.
Totally. It's also something that, pops up in the search results on Google, so it's another way that you're increasing your reputation management. I think it's an excellent idea. You did mention, though, that Google likes fresh content. So I assume, how often do you think we should be blogging if we're going to commit to it?
I think that's a really difficult question to answer. If you can commit to doing it on a weekly basis, that's ideal. But if the best you can do is once a month, then that's fine too. I think, minimally, I think, and again, you can ask different experts, they'll give you different answers, but my answer would be at least once a month.
No, I'm totally with you. It's tough, especially if you're juggling a lot of responsibilities and you've got a full job search going on. I mean, there's so much to think about. Well, I mentioned in the introduction that you authored a new book called The Infographic Resume, and I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about what is an infographic resume, maybe even what is an infographic for people who may not have heard, and why do you think we need one? How can we go about getting one? Kind of give us the scoop.
Yeah, I was really excited to be able to write this book because it's relatively new and fresh and sort of cutting edge. So an infographic, we've already seen those. When you read U.S. News or any newspaper or magazine, you'll see off to the side in the margin of the article, there's some little picture. And that picture is a graph, a pie chart, or something visual, which sort of captures and simplifies some of the more complicated or detailed parts of what the article is saying. So, oftentimes it's the climate change or the unemployment status, labor status, things like that. You'll see graphs and charts. Those visual images and an infographic, in essence, takes complex information and compiles it into a simple visual image. So we see them all the time. We just don't necessarily know that we call them pictures, right? But what happens many times in marketing and in other industries, you start seeing lots of information being compiled into an infographic with more than just one data point. So you'll see the 10 reasons why everybody should be on social media during job search, and it will give you tips and facts and figures and pictures of why that's important. The beautiful thing about an infographic is that you don't necessarily need to have design skills. It certainly helps, but there are enough templates out there to make it easy for you. And more importantly, the human brain is hardwired to process images faster than words. We didn't have, when man was created, we didn't have an alphabet in the written word. We started with pictures. So our brain is very simple and can process those pictures much faster than they can words on a page. So we think about the different reasons why marketers are using it. Those same reasons apply to people in job search as well, and carrying it into the infographic resume. Taking a complex information from your work history and converting that into visual imagery that more simply spells out the message or conveys what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that's great.
The other reason infographics are doing well with all of us is, again, that computer in our pocket. It's very hard oftentimes to read all of that text on your phone, no matter how big your phone or mobile device or tablet. But a picture, which conveys the same information, is much easier on the eyes, and it actually catches our attention because there's color involved and all that kind of stuff. So it stops the reader and says, oh, wait, let me take a look at this. When we were little kids, we loved looking at picture books, and we liked the picture book because we focused on the picture and not on the words. And so the adults are sort of the same way. Focus on the pictures and not necessarily the words when we're really busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so if we want to learn more about and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but if we want to learn more about your book, The Infographic Resume, where's the best place for us to go? Like, where can we get a copy of it?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, the Infographic Resume, is probably the best place. You can also get it at Barnes & Noble, either online or many of the stores carry it there too. But Amazon's probably the best place to get it. Yeah.
That's great. That's so exciting. So one last thing I wanted to ask you about, on your online profile, actually I think it's for your Twitter profile, you describe yourself as an unapologetic introvert. And so, as someone who is also introverted, I know that we sometimes have struggles when it comes to things like job searching. So if we're listening and we're introverted, what tips might you have for us to help us with our job search?
Yeah, that's such a great question. One of the reasons why I love social media is that it allows me to interact when I'm ready and after I've thought things out. And one of the things that I know about introverts is that we don't do well in impromptu, thinking on our feet kind of situations. We like to be able to process the information and then respond. And that's what social media has allowed me to do. The other thing is, another tip is, we can do anything as long as we know there's an end point. And so rather than look at the idea of networking with large groups of people as something that you would never do if your life depended on it, you could go and do that as long as you knew that you're only going to be there for an hour. So for 1 hour, you put on an act and you put on your game face and you go out there and you meet a bunch of people. Anybody can do that. It takes some effort. The other secret that I have is I am not the world's greatest networker. I, though, have friends who are incredibly well connected. And when I have a message or I need help with something, I reach out to my well-connected friends and ask them for help. And one of the things that they love doing more than anything is connecting me with the people they know in their network. So while we may not all be great networkers, we may not like doing it, we can, but also tap into the people that you already know who are great at doing this, because they really can help. And build downtime into your day. So if you know that you're going to an event in the evening and you're going to have to meet new people, plan on having a little time in between work and when you go out so that you can re-energize and get yourself geared up for being in a public forum.
Oh, I totally agree. I think you're really highlighting the fact that, even though there are some challenges with being an introvert, there are also some really positive things. So you kind of have to balance the two, and the job search can work out just fine, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. Well, where can people go to learn more about you and also Career Sherpa? Yeah,
please visit my website, which is careersherpa.net. I regularly add blog posts there and have things going on there that might be of interest to people. I'm sharing new tools and tips every week. I'm also all over Twitter, my favorite platform. I'm there every day, multiple times a day. My handle is @CareerSherpa. I've got a Facebook page where I'm sharing interesting news and more fun articles, motivational pieces. I'm on Pinterest at CareerSherpa. But probably the best place to find, I'm on LinkedIn, Hannah Morgan. The best place to see what I'm saying and see what I'm sharing, and mostly I'm sharing work of other great people, experts in the field, is Twitter. It's a great opportunity to learn that tool as well if you're not there already.
Oh, that's great. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for joining me. This has been excellent.
Angela, thank you so much for these great questions. It was really fun.
I really appreciate it. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher to ensure you never miss an episode.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.